Welcome to Let the Quran Speak. I'm Aisha, your host. We're almost halfway through Ramadan. Let's begin our segment with some rapid-fire Ramadan-focused questions so we can keep that Ramadan energy going and also address your questions with Dr. Shabir Ally. Welcome to the show, Dr. Shabir.
Pleasure, yeah.
Okay, so we're doing Ramadan rapid-fire style. So first question is, how sick do you have to be to skip fasting?
Well, this has been discussed by classical Muslim scholars. Most will agree that if the fasting will cause you hardship, or if you will aggravate your illness by fasting, or you're not ill, but in fasting you definitely will become ill, then you don't have to fast. Some will even say that if you will aggravate your illness or become ill, then you should not fast. You're not allowed to fast because you have to preserve and safeguard your body, and it is haram or prohibited to harm yourself. So if fasting would harm you, then you're not allowed to fast. So a lot less is left to the individual to know himself or herself and to get advice from his or her medical doctor to know what is suitable for that person.
Okay. Should breastfeeding women fast?
This too has been discussed. Most scholars will say that if the woman fears that by breastfeeding she would harm herself while fasting, if by fasting while breastfeeding she might harm herself or her baby, then she shouldn't fast. And then what does she do as a result? Well, now we can just piggyback this to the answer about the ill person as well. So the person who is ill would be expected that after Ramadan is over and he or she is better, they will fast an equal number of days missed. But if the person does not expect to recover from illness, one has, let's say, a chronic illness, and one knows, okay, this is what is expected, I'm not going to be fasting. So one would feed one poor person one meal for each day of the fast. So that is in lieu of. One gives charity instead of the actual fasting. So what does the woman who is breastfeeding do? Some scholars say, well, she'll wait until she is freed from this obligation to breastfeed, and she would fast the equal number of days that she missed. I don't prefer that answer because it might mean that since the Islamic term for the maximum period of breastfeeding is 2 years, it may mean that she could miss 2 Ramadans in between, and then it just piles up and becomes difficult. It's easy to fast during the month of Ramadan because the whole spirit of the month is there. To fast it outside of Ramadan is not so difficult. Easy. Yeah. So I prefer the other answer, which is that she, like the sick person, would feed a poor person for each day of the fast, and then the obligation is over with and done.
Okay, so this might piggy off of what you've said so far, but what if a woman has successive pregnancies and is unable to fast for a few years?
Well, here too, the scholars have discussed this, and some have said that she will fast an equal number of other days when she is healthy again, but there you can see the difficulty with piling up so many years of missed Ramadan fasts. So the other option is for her to, what some other scholars have said, and this seems to be more agreeable to me, more reasonable, that she gives a charity for each day of the fast. She feeds one poor person one meal for each day.
Okay. Can I still fast when traveling?
Scholars have generally left this up to the individual to decide, but they all agree because the Quran says that if one is ill or on a journey, one would fast an equal number of other days. So the permission is already in the Quran that the person who is traveling does not need to fast on the day of the travel, but will fast a day later on to make up for that. But some have gone to the extreme of taking the verse so literally that they said that what the fasting person is required to do is to fast the equal number of other days, not to fast that day itself.
Oh, wow, okay.
And so even if he fasted that day, he still has to fast the equal number of other days because they're taking the Quranic wording so literally that they think that the obligation is to fast the other days, not the days when you're traveling. But other scholars have said that if the person is going to harm himself by fasting while traveling, obviously this is wrong, he shouldn't do that. But if he is traveling while the permission is there for him not to fast, if he chooses to fast, nonetheless his fasting will be acceptable And then in the end, what it amounts to is what is most convenient for the traveler himself, like if, or herself. If they feel that, okay, it's more convenient for me, despite the hardships of traveling, I can still fast and get it over and done with, I prefer that, than to leave it for later on. That's the traveler's choice. The traveler can fast. But if the traveler decides to leave off the fast, some will say only if the traveling is of that sort, which causes hardship, then he has that permission, then he's allowed to do that. Some will say that if it qualifies as a traveling for the purpose of shortening prayers, which is like 48 miles of a journey, then that person is allowed to forego the fast and to fast an equal number of other days. Some will say, well, okay, modern means of transportation make 48 miles, you know,
Super
a piece of
easy,
cake,
yeah.
a walk in the park. And so that should not count as an excuse for not fasting. But others will reply that, you know, this is how it's stated in the Book of God, and it's already there explained as this short journey. So we can say that in short, that what some people say is that if it feels to you like you're on a journey, it requires some kind of preparation. It requires some dislocation. You're not really sure where your evening meal is going to be when it's time to break your fast and so on, or especially the morning meal when you're going to have it. So with all of these inconveniences that are included in the act of traveling, we thank God that He's given us this permission. And I think in the end, it's good to leave that up to the traveler. You know you have an obligation to fast the 30 days, whether it is in Ramadan itself or outside of Ramadan. You have that option. But beware, if you leave it till after Ramadan, perhaps you may not get around to it for a while, because it's not so easy to fast it outside of Ramadan. Many people would prefer to just do it in the month itself and get it over and done with. But don't put yourself to hardship thinking that you're serving God by doing so. God does not want to put you to hardship and difficulty.
So it sounds like at the end of the day, you're leaving it up to the traveler to decide.
Yes, a verse that guides us here is in the Quran, in the 2nd chapter, the 185th verse, which says, in the context of fasting, يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَ وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَ. God desires ease for you. He does not desire hardship for you. Perfect.
Okay, next question is, different masjids have different, or mosques have different timetables for when fasting begins. Why is this?
This is partly due to the difficulty in defining what is meant by dawn. So there are 3 different definitions at least. There is a nautical dawn for people who are at sea. There is civil dawn for people who are in a city. And there's the astronomical dawn for those who like are astronomically minded. And these are 3 different times. So if we say from dawn to sunset, well then what do you mean by dawn exactly? This is left a little bit undefined. And it has to do with the number of degrees between the sun's rising and the horizon. Some say 12 degrees, some say 15 degrees, some say 18 degrees. So this is left to some judgment, and some mosques are following these various judgments. What is more to the point, however, is to realize that the matter was left a little bit unclear deliberately. You know, if there's a hadith that says that if God omits mention of something, that is a mercy for you, because God is not forgetful, and He knows what He wants to say and what He needs to make clear. If He makes something absolutely clear, then we'll have no option but to follow it, and we'll be straitjacketed within His rules. But if He left some vagueness, He gives us a lot of leeway, and we see that this leeway was taken advantage of by, well, in a good way, by companions of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Reports show that some of them kept eating even after dawn had entered and the brightness had appeared, but the sun had not actually risen. And they ate close to that time, and then they prayed, and then they started their fast from that period. So we can be a little bit less strict with the precise timings. You know, people look at their chart and they don't want to go 1 minute over and so on. We don't have to be so strict with it because it was not laid down strictly. The time of the breaking of the fast, this is quite clear, when the sun sets. And we're even encouraged to hasten breaking the fast. Whereas on the other hand, we're encouraged to keep eating until we are sure that it is the time for starting the fast. So if somebody can actually be unsure and he keeps eating, and another person feels, I'm sure, it's already time, and he stops eating. But you can't impose your certainty on the other person.
Okay.
So this gives us some kind of latitude. If within the family somebody is, very strict with fasting and ready to do it and wants to do it right, okay, that person stop eating earlier. Somebody else in the family is a little bit weaker in the faith. We want to give them some latitude. They want to eat a little bit more. We can give them that latitude because the sun hasn't risen yet. They still have a little bit of time. If they're not sure that it's time for starting the fast, they can continue to eat.
Perfect. Is it okay to use eye, ear, or nose drops while fasting?
Ear drops and eye drops are not an issue because the ear ducts and the eye ducts. I don't know if I'm using terminology here. I mean that there's no the tear ducts. I mean there is no real connection between these and the stomach. But as for the nasal cavity, that easily leads into the throat and then by extension into the stomach. So drops could actually get in there. Now, scholars have tried to determine what is it that actually breaks the fast. Is it like something entering the throat? They said definitely it's not something entering the mouth. You could actually put something in your mouth. Somebody cooking, they want to make sure that the food is going to turn out right. They could actually taste it without swallowing. Of course, they're going to absorb and enjoy the taste and so on, but this much is like you have some kind of latitude here. So putting something in your mouth, you could actually chew some food. Nowadays we have like prepared baby food. We can think in ancient times people did not have this. They may have to chew nuts and hard foods in order to feed them to their babies. And it would be masticated, but still it's allowed, because putting something in your mouth then it's known it does not break the fast. So what breaks it? Is it something going into the throat, or is it something going all the way down into the stomach? So different scholars have given different explanations about this. So those who say that going into the throat would break the fast, so the nose drops sometimes, you can feel the effects of it in your throat. So they give against that. So the best thing we can say is not that it actually breaks the fast, because this doesn't actually constitute eating or drinking. What clearly breaks the fast is eating or drinking or sexual intercourse. So things that come close to that but are not quite there do not actually break the fast. You might say it, renders it a little bit questionable, or it's questionable to do that thing while you're fasting. So if you can avoid using the nose drops, better to avoid it. If you have to, then I don't consider that breaks the fast, because it's not eating or drinking.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Dr. Shabir.
You're welcome.
Hey YouTube, we hope you benefited from this video. If you liked it, or if you didn't, let us know in the comments below. And if you're interested in learning more, check out some of our other videos. And don't forget to subscribe so you can get new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.